You're listening to Served Up, a podcast that features inspiring beverage professionals and topic experts that share their passions through meaningful conversations. I'm your host, Bridget Albert, also known as the Market Fresh Mixologist, an industry mentor with decades of experience. Grab a cocktail and sit back. Let's learn how we can make a positive impact in our industry. Hey y'all, it's Bridget here. I had the chance to chat with my new friend, Sandy McIntyre. He is the distillery manager at Tamdhu Distillery in Speyside. He joined the team in 2014 after more than 8 years with Diageo, where he worked across several distilleries and maltings. With a background in chemistry, he brings strong technical expertise and a focus of quality to whiskey production. He's widely respected in the whiskey industry and has received so many awards for his leadership and his contribution to Scotch whiskey. So sit back, relax, grab yourself a Tamdhu cocktail and enjoy the show. Sandy, ready?
Good, go for it. Let's go. Let's rock. Let's rock and roll, yeah?
Let's rock and roll.
We're just going to get that in everywhere we can. You know that?
Yes. Sandy, welcome to Served Up. I'm really happy to have you on the show today.
It's great to be with you, actually. Yeah, I mean, I always love the technology that there is these days where that we can sort of catch up and be together, let's say, yet there's thousands of miles between us. And I think that's fantastic.
Boy, I agree. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, Sandy, before we jump into Scotch, all things Scotch?
Yeah, I've been in this industry now for nearly 20 years. So, let's face it, it's an industry, once you join it, you just do not want to leave, because the whole alcohol industry, the Scotch whisky industry, is so friendly. It's so welcoming. It's so enjoyable. It's so social. You really never want to leave. But my history is actually previously with Diageo, and up here in Speyside in the north of Scotland. I joined them way back in 2006 and joined in the industry in the maltings at the very start of the process. Thoroughly enjoyed that at the sites that they've got up here in Speyside before moving to 3 distilleries in Speyside, some of which you might have heard of, but most of them actually go into blends. So there's Glenlossie Distillery, Manachmore Distillery and Glen Spey Distillery before joining here at Tamdhu back in 2014. So it already seems like a lifetime away, to be quite honest with you. I celebrated my 11th anniversary probably about 5 or 6 weeks ago. And yeah, I raised a wee dram for that. So that was quite a momentous occasion. And at the same time, we've got a great team of staff here at the distillery. So we only produce Tamdhu single malt here at Tamdhu. And we'll go on and talk about that in a bit more detail when we're having a dram or two between us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to understand, I want our listeners to understand, especially for those who might be curious about your role at the distillery. Like when you were growing up, did you decide, I want to be a distillery manager as a young boy? Or you're like, I want to be an astronaut? Like, how did you wind up there? What type of studying, what type of education is required for the role that you have?
Not at all. This wasn't where I saw my career path going. You're talking about when you're a wee boy. I'm just not long back from the States. I had the joy of being over there with you guys just at the start of the November time. And what I always wanted to do was drive big lorries. I always wanted to buy trucks, as you would call them. We call them lorries over here in the UK. So actually going around and seeing the big Kenworths and Peterbilts and the Macs and everything like that in the car parks off the interstates in the US, that was a dream come true for me, spent some time doing that in the US. So as a little boy, that big truck was always one of the things that I looked forward to. I started doing environmental chemistry. So actually my qualification is a chemist, environmental analytical chemistry. And following a brief stint with the Environment Agency in Scotland in the sort of early 1990s, I actually moved to a different job where the samples weren't quite so nice, Bridget. I worked in wastewater treatment. Yeah, wow. I used to go home every night. My wife used to tell me to take off all my clothes at the back door, but for completely different reasons. Because I was usually a wee bit dirty, a wee bit smelly. So joining an industry where I am now, where the samples are far much more enjoyable, and as I said, all that social aspect is a great place to be. So
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is amazing. And as a distillery manager, what does a typical day look like for you at Tamdhu?
there's no such thing as a typical day. So, right now I'm looking out the window. It's late afternoon here in Scotland. Lovely blue skies and very, very warm. But last week I was involved in we were selecting a single cask for release. So the whole team here were involved in that. We had great fun doing that. We whittled it down quite quickly from 12 samples down to one. So that will be and this is an exclusive that you're getting right now, actually, because nobody else knows this yet. Nobody else even knows this yet. This was for a single cask that we'll be releasing at the end of April, start of May. We have a whiskey festival in Speyside around that time, so it's going to be released for them. We were doing a filming event for Christmas, our Christmas New Year message. I was also authorising another release, a limited edition release that we do 1,000 bottles for May times. I was selecting which whiskey it will go into that bottle. The distillery right now is silent. Now that's a very strange term to use, and what that means is that we're not in production. So we're doing some maintenance at the moment, but the bizarre term is this we talk about silent season. And yet it's not silent, because there's guys hammering copper, there's drills, there's angle grinders. So it's anything but silent. It's the noisiest time you ever go to in a distillery. All this noise, this cacophony of noise round about you. So not silent at all. So busy at the moment managing contractors. We are down also coming into just our Christmas shutdown time as well. So we put out some casks this morning. They'll be down to the bottling hall. We brought in a tanker of spirit from another distillery today as well, so we're filling that into casks. So as well as the management of the distillery, quite a lot of brand things. As I said, just back from the States, was doing some work with the brand out at some bars and restaurants out in the US. So there's no real typical day, unfortunately, which makes it so much more fun. Because you never really know what it is you're going to get.
I bet. There at Tamdhu, how do you balance really consistency with house style and just the natural variables in nature? How does let's just break it down for the folks who are just curious in general about Scotch.
Okay, so let's take it down to the three very basics. We've got water. We've got malted barley, and we've got yeast. So they're the three ingredients that we use. That's all we're allowed to use. I mean, one of the great things about the Scotch whisky is the Scotch whisky regulations, which very much put controls in what we're allowed to do and not allowed to do. So taking the easy one, yeast. We've been using the same strain or variety of yeast for the last 9 years now. There's three main yeast suppliers that supply into the distilling industry in Scotland. One called Lallemand, which generally comes over from another part of Europe. One called Kerry, which is manufactured in Scotland. And then the other supplier, which is the one that we use, a company called Mowry, who are based in the northeast of England. And these guys do an awful lot of work in developing different strains of yeast. So there's baker's yeast, obviously used in the baking process. There's brewing yeast for brewers and that side of things. And then there's distiller's yeast. The variety we use is a variety called MG, so Mike Golf Plus. And it was developed specifically for the distilling industry to enhance the yield. So what we look at and measure every week when we're in production is how many litres of alcohol do we produce from every tonne of malt that we process. And on average, most distilleries, we generally all work to the same number. About 410 litres of alcohol is what we would expect to produce from every tonne of malted barley. This new strain of yeast, MG Plus, which came on about, say, 8-9 years ago, it gives us a slightly higher yield for nothing. And as a good Scots person, we always like things for nothing in Scotland. Always, always, always. So giving us that extra amount of alcohol, whilst 3-4 litres doesn't sound much, over a year it's quite a lot. If you're processing 8,000-9,000 tonnes of grain each year, then it soon mounts up. It also enhances the character of the spirit that we produce. And the joy about all the different distilleries we've got in Scotland is we all produce a slightly different, what we call distillery new make character. The character we make here at Tamdhu is really bright, really fruity. It's got lovely pears in it. It's got green apple, a hint of vanilla. That's what you would call the house style of the spirit. The one 5 minutes along the road produces a spirit that's nutty, smells like peanuts, a little peanut oil. Another distillery 10 minutes up the hill here smells like fresh cut grass, green grassy they call that. So this variety of yeast helps us to achieve the fruity character we want, gives us this really enhanced character. So that's a variable that we can mess about with and change, and it has an impact on what our flavour tastes of our new make spirit each time. Malted barley. I've said before, I started my career in the maltings, and it's a fascinating place to be because there are so many variables in the maltings, far, far more than there is in distilling. But malt, what we look for is consistency. We want to enable the malt to be processed easily through the process, through the mash tun, have good drainage. And generally certainly for the last 15 years, the quality of malt supplied by all malts in Scotland has been very, very good, and hasn't given us any processing issues. So it's a variable that I would like to think, not solved and smooth, but it's certainly been a lot easier in the last 10, 15 years anyway. Water. The marketeers love water, don't they? They just, it's all about this clean, crisp water from the River Spey that we take. And
yes.
Very few distilleries actually take water from the River Spey. We take water from a lot of the springs, the burns, the small rivers that flow into the Spey, but very few actually take from the River Spey. What we look for is cold, clean water. It's as simple as that. And generally within Scotland, we've got an abundance of rainfall. A wee bit different this year for some distilleries, but generally we've not got any shortage of rain. And certainly over the weekend, there was plenty of it here as well. So again, we're pretty lucky in that respect that we've got consistency there. So that's the three things. That the one that we can mess about with probably the most is whether we have peated malt, unpeated malt. We choose to have unpeated or very, very, very lightly peated. And then yeast for us is the two in terms of the raw materials that we could mess about with.
I really appreciate you breaking that down, Sandy, because I think a lot of folks don't understand whiskey and kind of the nuances what really makes it. And so that just made it really crystal clear on really what makes up a glass of whiskey, what's in the actual bottle itself, and how those little nuances really affect one another to create something very special.
The fun part comes into it when you start to vary pumping rates, times for fermentation, the style of wort, whether you want clear or cloudy wort, the shape of stills, the speed that you distill. All those things are the things also that play a part in what that distillery character, that clear as we call it, that clear liquid smells and tastes like, is then when we then put it into a cask and into the warehouse that the real magic happens in terms of the development, obviously, of the colour and then the other flavours that are coming from the wood. So, it's like a big chemistry set.
Yeah,
for big boys.
It is.
For big boys and big girls as well, for that matter.
It is. Absolutely. Let's talk about the brand itself. Let's talk a little bit about Tamdhu. What is the history of the brand? Can you share a little bit? What does Tamdhu mean?
Good question, because we often forget, or I often forget to actually say that. What does Tamdhu itself mean? So in Scotland, obviously, we use a lot of, actually, the road signs here now, quite a lot of them are in Gaelic. And none of us actually speak Gaelic, so it's very, very strange, or very, very few people actually speak the language. But I've split it into two things. There's Tam and there's Du. DHU. DHU means black or sinister. So the knives that we've got in our kilts, when we put on our kilts. So of course it's the World Cup in the US next year, soccer. You guys are getting invaded by lots of Scotsmen in their kilts, having a big party. So they will, some of them may have within the socks of their kilts a knife that we call our skiing do. So it's a black knife, and typically it's got a black handle on it. So do is black or dark or sinister. I quite like the sinister bit because it makes it a wee bit more spooky. And then Tam is a Gaelic word for a hill. So we have a hill behind the distillery here. So it's the hill is just a general term called a Tam. So it's like dark hill or sinister hill, which I like the sinister, but I think it's just got a bit more of a kind of feeling to it rather than black hill. I think sinister sounds nicer. The history of the distillery, though, it's quite an old distillery. Been open since 1897, and it was a whole group of wealthy guys who came together. One of the Walkers from Johnny Walker, one of the Grants from Glenfiddich, and I've forgotten. One of the Dewars from Dewars Whisky, Tommy Dewar. They came together, and even at that time, they had quite a lot of money. And they employed an architect who's renowned for in the distilling industry in this area for the pagoda style roofs, a fellow called Charles Doig. So they got him to design this really, really modern, efficient distillery back in 1897. And it opened up, and to be honest, it's had a checkered history over all its years. Some problems with water way back in 1903. It was sold to a company called Highland Distillers, who subsequently are part of Edrington or Macallan. Closed a bad fire in about 1919. It closed down about 1926. The Great Depression and Prohibition, even for that matter. Didn't reopen again until after the Second World War, so late 1940s. And then, quite surprisingly, in the year 2010, that Highland Distillers or Edrington came along and closed the distillery. It was a time where pretty much every other distillery and distilling company was doubling, expanding production. But bolt out the blue to the team here at the time, they didn't really have a place for Tamdhu within their brand portfolio. So they put the distillery and the warehouses up for sale. And the company that I work for, which is a Scottish family company, a company called Ian McLeod's, they came along and were really fortunate to buy the place in 2011 and resume production again in 2012. And to be fair, it's gone from from leaps and bounds from then in terms of actually creating a brand and having whiskey to release. Because there used to be some Tamdhu single malt kicked about in the probably late 80s, early 90s. It wasn't heavily promoted in any way. There's a really good 18-year-old, a good 21-year-old, but it was never really pushed by Edrington or Highland, let's say. So it probably has done the site, the Power of Good, being closed and then sold and rebranded and re-released effectively, because we're really, really building quite a loyal following in terms of drinkers, folk that are looking for an alternative to some other whiskies, and we're building a very good reputation for ourselves.
Can you explain to the listeners, how do you decide when a whiskey is ready? How do you decide whether to release it like at a 12 or 15 and 18, whatever it might be, or when it should be held back longer?
Well, we have our core range of whiskies. So when we relaunched the distillery back in 2012, we bought the distillery and the warehouses that were here at the time and some of the stock in the warehouses. And it was quite important that we managed to get some whiskey out into the marketplace, let's say. We were fortunate there was whiskey there, there was some old stuff and some not so old stuff. But at the time, decided, right, okay, let's get something out there, get a product on a shelf, get some return for our money. So we released a Tamdhu 10-year-old at that time. It was the right thing for the company to do at the time, but really what we wanted to see within our aged range, our core range, is something like a 12, a 15, an 18, and even where we are now with a 21. So we had to build up some stock, basically, or wait till we had sufficient stock that was available to give us a 12-year-old. The story with Tamdhu is that we only mature in sherry casks. That is we're the only distillery in Scotland that only matures our single malt in sherry season casks from beginning to end. There's no other ones that do that. It makes it very expensive for us, but what we've had to do is gradually build stock up. So when it came time with sufficient stock available to change the 10 to 12, we made the conscious decision to actually do that, because particularly the American consumer actually, and Asian as well, they still go for age as being the most important factor. One of the jobs that I see that I should be doing as well is a wee bit of education. So I'm not only here to talk about Tamdhu as such. I'd like to think I'm actually talking about Scotch whisky in general, because people focus on age and people focus on colour. Yes, would you agree?
I 100% agree. That's why I'm asking the question. Like, yes, absolutely. They look at the bottles, they look at the age, they look at the color, and thinking that is value.
It's not. Can I make this perfectly clear right here, yes, right now?
Please do, Sandy. Go for it.
So you will probably end up needing to do an edit, I'm sure, when I say something. But the oldest whiskey that we have here at Tamdhu, it's a cask from 1961. So it's 60. It was 64 years old in September. It looks like Coca-Cola. It's so dark, it looks like Coca-Cola. It noses superbly. There's toffee apple there. It reminds me chocolate orange, dark chocolate orange. Beautiful. Everything, the nose, the colour, fantastic. But you put that in your mouth, it ain't pleasant. The technical tasting notes are, it's shit. We would never ever release that whiskey and put it in a bottle and sell that, or try and sell it to somebody, because we don't believe that it's testament to the flavour profile of Tamdhu whiskies. So we actually use it now as a demonstration to say, look at this whiskey, look at that, isn't that superb colour? Nose it, look at this, isn't it fantastic? Taste it. And it's a completely different story. And so if we talk about that to people and say, look, there's 64-year-old whiskey, but it's not very good. It's hopefully trying to maybe put it into people's mind to say, oh, wow, age isn't always the best thing. So yes, there are sweet spots within the maturation profile of casks, which is, I guess, getting back to the question you probably originally asked. And what we have here is we've got what we call first fill casks. So in other words, the first time that the spirit from the distillery is going into that cask. Then we've got refill casks, and they play a different role when it comes the time for us to prepare the mature whiskey. First fill cask gives us intense flavour, lots of colour, a lot of dark colours for European oak, and not so dark colours, more golden colours for American oak. We then use refill casks to actually soften some of that flavour, and to actually maybe bring the colour back down a bit slightly, because sometimes it's very, very dark, particularly from first fill European casks. So when it comes as time to develop things like the 12, 15, 18, 21, what we're looking at is the ratios of the different cask styles that are going into each of those releases. And we'll talk about it when we actually come on to the whiskies we've got. It is the part that each of those cask profiles plays that gives us the colours and the flavours into that age range, that core range. The fun thing comes along when we are doing other releases, which aren't constrained with an age. I often say that there's one of the whiskies that Tamdhu does. It's called Tamdhu Batch Strength, And it's generally an annual release. Generally, strength maybe 57, 58, 59% alcohol. It's non-aged, but you know what? It's one of the best value whiskies that we sell. But it's very, very underrated. People just don't, particularly because it doesn't have an age on it. They don't know, well, it must be 5-year-old whiskey. I can assure you, it ain't 5-year-old whiskies. And this is back to the message. Scotch whisky distillers for non-aged whiskies, the legislation here is that if there is an age put on a bottle, it needs to be the age of the youngest spirit that goes into it. I did a wee experiment here. Well, actually, I'm not claiming responsibility for it, but we did an experiment here in 2024 where one of our blenders prepared up a sample. We had a group here of 20 people. We gave them all a look at this sample, tasted the sample, and said, what age do you think that? If we had to put an age on it, it's non-aged, but if we had to put an age on it, what age do you think that whiskey would be? Now, there was whiskey in the bottle from the 1960s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and the 2020s. So legally, if we had to put an age on it, it was 4-year-old whiskey.
Right.
If that bottle was presented to you, it's 4-year-old whiskey, nobody would buy it.
No.
Nobody would buy it. But if you actually saw it and tasted it, you would say, oh my God, that's great whiskey. But it was non-aged. It was just a bit of fun. But this is the message we need to get across. There's great blended whiskey and there's fantastic non-aged whiskies. Try them. Please experiment. Please ask if you go to a good retailer, a good whiskey shop, a good bar even, that have got a selection shelf, ask. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? They're going to say, no, we're not going to give you a taste of it. All right, I'm not buying it then. Ask the person.
100%. And have some fun with it as well, right? Because I think at the end of the day, like Tamdhu's not going to put out something that's not delicious.
No, we won't. We won't. Our reputation, and every distiller's reputation goes on what's in a bottle. Everybody's got different tastes. I can't deny that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not particularly fond of two whiskies that, you know what, they're worldwide, well-known whiskies. That if I said the names of them, certainly everybody would know who they are. But they're not to my palate. They're not to my taste. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just they're not to my taste.
Well, let's talk about taste. Can you take us through and just give us some high points of the different expressions of Tamdhu?
So our core range tends to go, said before, 12, 15, 18, and 2025 we released a 21-year-old. As I said before, it's only ever matured in sherry casks. So there, right away, I went into a store when I was in the US, very well-known liquor stores, they're all over the place, and they had a massive selection of wine. Never ever seen such a big selection of wine in my life. And I said, how does somebody choose a bottle of wine in a store? And he said, the first question I asked, did you like red or white or rosé? Well, right, I only really like white. Okay, that rules out, 2/3 of the store. Do you like a particular grape? Or how much you want to spend? So he says, I narrow it down. And the same thing goes for whiskey. If you don't like sherry matured whiskey, then unfortunately, probably Tamdhu's not for you. But you know what? I hope that you like a peated whiskey. Hope you like some from Islay. Explore those flavours. So Tamdhu, only sherry. So it's got that lovely sweetness to it. Only ever Oloroso sherry as well. So it's got that fruitiness to it as well. The 12-year-old, the joys that we've got is we use two different wood types. We use Quercus alba, which is oak from the US, where we have the tree has been chopped down in America, shipped across to Spain, prepared into a cask, and then had Oloroso sherry put in it for 2 years before it's been emptied and then transported across to Scotland. We then got Quercus robur, which is oak from Spain for us, European oak, and it's going through exactly the same process. It takes about 6 years for a cask, for the tree to get chopped down before we actually see a cask here at Tamdhu. Much more expensive than bourbon barrels. Again, thanks to you folks in the US. Absolutely great that you only use them once, because us tight Scots people get them very, very cheaply. But what it means is that European, sherry casks are a bit more expensive than bourbon barrels. Generally somewhere in the region of about 10, 15 times more expensive.
That's insane.
It is
Pause
not.
right there. I mean, just the fact that you are taking time to invest in this tasting experience through the barrel, 10 to 15 times more expensive is absolutely bananas to me.
I was just talking to my assistant manager earlier today about some bourbon barrels. We can get them for 85 quid, or 85 pounds, I should say. Maybe it's what, 90 bucks or 100 bucks, would that be? A sherry seasoned cask, somewhere at the moment for us, £1,200. So what's that, about 1,400 bucks? That'd be about right, yeah? Maybe conversion.
Yeah, it's such a huge difference. But I mean, the outcome of what you are making in that barrel is amazing. I mean, and it really is because of that barrel that you pick up all those wonderful nuances right from the sherry.
What we get from American oak, though, is this, as you would expect as you get in your bourbon, let's face it, it's just been a sherry seasoned cask, is lovely vanillas, soft, light, some honey, we talk about tablet in Scotland, fudge, like a little like fudge, some hints of green banana, pear, apple, those lovely soft elements. And what it leads to is, for me, a whiskey that I can drink any time of the day. I mean, I prefer American oak sherry seasoned casks than European. But you then, and a lighter golden colour is what you get in terms of the development of the colour with that. You then go to the other end of the spectrum, and what you've got with European oak is a dark ruby red colour liquid after maturation. You know, a real rich, complex flavours. Dates, sultanas, raisins, toffee, butterscotch, quite complex flavours actually. A little drier, a little more tannin as well there too. So two opposite ends of the spectrum. And the joy that comes with it is the range that we've got mixes them in different ratios. So I classify them as like ingredients in a recipe. You've got American oak, and again, the cask size plays a part in this. American oak hogsheads, which are about 250 litres. So quite quick and intense in development of flavours and colours. American oak butts, which are about 500 litres. A little less so, just again, it's to do with the ratios of wood contact with the liquid. And then you go into the opposite end, that European oak hogsheads, European oak butts. And then you throw into the mix these refill casks I spoke about that are more there to actually bulk out liquid quantities than actually introduce flavours. And what it gives the team here the ability to do is mix them in different ratios. So 12-year-old, Tamdhu 12, a lot more first fill American oak casks, a lot more vanilla, a lot lighter, a great introduction to Scotch whisky, actually, to be honest with you. It's not too intense in terms of its alcohol content, about 43%. So it's not got a big mouth burn or mouth or throat burn when you're drinking it. You then move up into the 15-year-old, a little more of European oak here now, and it's a kind of transition whiskey. It's where it kind of the balance changes from American to European. So a little more honey this time round, a little more almonds, a little more spice in it as well, up at 46%, so a wee bit more intense in terms of the flavours. And to me, it's a whiskey that I never particularly rated highly in our portfolio, but in the last 2 years, 18 months to 2 years, I've really begun to appreciate the Tamdhu 15-year-old for what it does and what it is. You then move up into something like the 18-year-old, and my gosh, what a different step change that is again. It's creamy. It coats your gums. It really stays in the mouth. The mouthfeel and the intensity in your mouth, it just wants just like a ping pong ball. Ding, 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 round your mouth. Hitting the back of your teeth, the back of your tongue, all over the place. And the finish stays so long because what you've got there is a higher proportion of European oak. We're up about 73, 74% of first fill European oak when we move into Tamdhu 18-year-old. It's a complex whiskey that, to me, I can only drink a small amount of. I did it once, actually, with a guy from Maine. He came over to stay with me for a wee while. And the two of that, and I said at the time, I'll never manage to drink a bottle of this in a night. Famous last words, because between the two of us, the bottle of 18 miraculously disappeared. Don't know where it went, together with some other whiskies. So I have managed to do it, but I never thought I would, because it's not quite to. It's more of whiskey you want to savour at the end of a barbecue, the end of an evening, just sitting chilling out and shooting the breeze with somebody. Because you'll only have 2 or 3 of them maybe in a night. And it's a bit more expensive whiskey, so you don't want to be drinking it as if it's water or Coca-Cola anyway, let's face it. And then you move to the 21, and the 21 is different again. And we didn't want it just to be 3 years older than the 18, because that could be dead easy to do. Just leave it 3 years in a cask, and I have 21 years old now. So the 21 actually steps back a little. The 21's, I'm saying it's like 2 whiskies in one bottle, because what you get with the 21-year-old, ratios-wise, about 65% first fill European, about 27 to 30% first fill American, and then just this very, very small amount of refill casks. But what you get is 2 whiskies in one, Bridget. You get it, first of all, at the front of your tongue. You get the American oak at the front of your tongue. Mm-hmm. So you get this lovely sweetness and softness. And then about 3-5 seconds later, further back in your tongue, you get the richness of the European oak.
How cool.
It's more oily than creamy this time. Mm-hmm. It's just a different... And all it is just the makeup of the casks. And I find that totally amazing. I mean, there's things within this industry that still blow my mind. And it is how you can sometimes take 2 bad casks, mix them together, and before you know it, you've got something that tastes great. Sometimes you have 2 casks that you've filled one after the other, but they taste totally different. And you just think, how does that happen? Although it's natural, wood's a natural product, so it's always going to kind of give us a wee bit of variation from time to time. But,
yeah, there is a bit of magic that happens, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah. And even in the distillery, you can, a couple of years ago, energy costs went absolute crazy over here. Our gas bill here at the distillery changed from about £60,000 per month to £420,000 per month. So how can we save money? So what we looked at making a couple of changes. And within 2 weeks, we found, and the changes were only saving us a few £1,000s, but within 2 weeks, we found that the character, this new make character, that fruitiness, was less intense, because we'd made a very, 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 very small change in the process. And so the decision was, no, we can't afford to do that. We want to have that intense fruity. So if it costs us an extra couple of £1,000 a week, well, so be it. Yeah. But just those tiny, tiny wee things can have a big, big difference at the other end.
Yeah, it's amazing. Sandy, if you could have a dram with anyone, living or not living, who would it be and what would you be drinking?
Well, I would add on to the tail end of that question. What would I be drinking if it wasn't Tamdhu? Is maybe another line. Because the question people, when they ask me which Tamdhu I drink, I was very fortunate. I won the world's best single cask, single malt a few years ago. So if somebody asks me, then that's my go-to. There's not many bottles of it left now, but that's my automatic go-to. If it's not that and it's a Tamdhu, there's another non-aged whiskey that we do that is my go-to. It's called Tamdhu Distinction. It's only from American oak casks, so it's only that lovely soft vanillas. Mm-hmm. The kind of whiskies that say you can drink at 8 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning, 11:30, and basically until you're still standing. So that's my go-to. If it's not Tamdhu, the one that I really prefer is a Glenfarclas. Who would it be with? Now, there's a good question, because I'm going to kind of go, there's 2 sides to that. I'm going to say the first one is I would love to have a dram with my dad. My dad died a few years ago.
I'm sorry.
No, not at all. But the bizarre thing is, which I love coincidences. I think the world is a really, really small place when it comes down to certain things. Tamdhu whiskey here, or spirit here, is also used in a blend called Famous Grouse, which you might have heard of. It's one of the main ingredients in Famous Grouse. My dad's favourite whiskey, and my dad died before I joined this distillery. My dad's favourite whiskey was Famous Grouse.
Wow, that's a big coincidence.
Kind of back at the not the spiritual home of Famous Grouse, but certainly one of them. So it would have been remarkable to sit down with my dad and have a dram with that. But if we're talking about somebody famous, I don't know, it's probably two folk. One who's living, one who isn't. Einstein. I would love to actually have met Einstein for somebody, because I'm a scientist, right?
Yeah. Oh, you guys could geek out.
Yeah, yeah. So there's that, which I think, his brain power is just so mental. It would have been well above me. I probably wouldn't have been able to have a conversation with the guy, let's face it, because I'm just quite normal and down to earth, really. And then the other person who's still living is a famous naturalist in the UK called David Attenborough. And I just think he actually celebrates his 100th birthday in the next few months.
Wow.
But the things that he has seen in the natural world is the things that I think would be really, really interesting to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Well, with that said, Sandy, I want to wish you just all my very best. I want to thank you so much for coming on Served Up. And I want to wish you just some great health and a lot of peace, Sandy. And I hope that you come back on the podcast to give us an update on what you're up to.
I would love to do that. It's been a great pleasure actually having a chat with you today. I would love to catch up with you maybe the next time I'm in the US as well, and we can share a dram together.
Let's do it. Cheers to that.
Yeah.
Cheers.
And I want to wish you and your family and all your listeners as well a fantastic 2026. We've got so much to look forward to in the world of whiskies, and wish everybody the very best of health, because that's the number one most important thing.
Absolutely. Cheers.
Cheers. Slàinte.
Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of our future Served Up episodes. Cheers.